intuition is an interesting thing, and because over time you see it everywhere, and there's memes about it, there's jokes about it, right? Like gamer brain. I don't even know if it's ever been labeled yet, but there's a way that people think. Like you always check behind the waterfall, right? Or the game tells you run that way. The first thing you do is run in the opposite direction because there's probably a chest or some consumable, something you can pick up. You have to have a certain understanding of how all video games are made to start to question or start to like push against those boundaries, right? Like a QA tester would. They know the expected experience and they can test that, but their job is to test what the players might do, right? What they could do in opposition to what the expectation is. And so to make a level intuitive to a player and rewarding, there's a lot of different elements to that. So it's like, how do I encourage the player's mind to read the landscape that I've designed? So the games that came to mind when I thought about that question was like Deus Ex, Human Revolution, and like Cyberpunk 2077, which, those kinds of games blare from the rooftops, hey, we're built this way. Here's an office building you have to get into, right? And there's an objective somewhere deep within it. You got to hack some computer and you got to get out. And so you have to think about the shape language and the mechanics that become consistent to the player. There are doors that I can walk through. The front door is guarded by a bunch of cops. It would be a very loud, bloody, bombastic way to get in, but I know I can use that door to get in. Maybe there are side doors, but those doors are little, blocked by obstacles of some kind or whatever. But there's also a vent. I recognize that vent because that vent was openable somewhere else. And I know that those vents are consistent. So there's a language, there's a vocabulary that begins to form in the player's mind because the level designers have built that vocabulary. And so it's less about the players having to use raw, intuition to interpret. You want them to interpret very little of what they're looking at. You want them to know what they're looking at, right? I recognize this landscape. I see the main path. So like something in Cyberpunk, there was a recent giant warehouse I had to bust into, and there was obviously like a giant hangar door that had a mech patrolling it. The shape of that door is obviously a primary way into the building, but it's going to be a suicide mission if I go through that thing. So the way is obvious, though it might be riddled with danger, but there's also cameras I can hack to distract players, those creatures with, and maybe I clear that path open. Or there'd be a pipe stretching from the wall where I'm standing on, just sort of looking out over where I have to get to. And these pipes stretch to the rooftop of the building where there's more of those vents that I'd recognize. So their language is obvious, right? The pipes maybe are a little less so. It's just a straight path. That's shape language versus mechanic language. So the vocabulary becomes more diverse, right? It's like, not only am I recognizing interactable objects, but I'm recognizing intended paths just in the hard geometry of the level. So it can really be very diverse how you want to approach stuff like that. And in some games, it's more prevalent than others. Like something as linear as Gears of War doesn't need that. Or Halo can be pretty convoluted. It can be easy to get lost in some of the old Halo campaigns because some of the levels are big and you're like, where the hell do I go? And maybe they'll slap a little checkpoint or a little, question marker for where you're supposed to go. But, it's a broad sense of expression how you get a player to feel like they can grasp what you're cooking with.